Good afternoon, everyone. I hope we are live. We just had a technical glimpse with the link broadcasting on LinkedIn. So we're just waiting for the presenters to join and then I can accept them. Just give us 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Just give us 5 minutes. I'm sure people will start coming in and we will start. We will start shortly. We will start shortly. We will start shortly. We will start shortly. We're just waiting for the presenters to log in. Everybody logged in. Good to see you all. Just give us 5-10 minutes for the presenters to log in. All right. People will probably have to refresh for them to find this in the on the page. On the page. People are logging in. Just give us 5 minutes for the presenters to join the link. We just had a technical glitch to broadcast on LinkedIn. It was just not going through, and we had to restart everything. Though we did a trial run, we had to restart everything. Please just give us 5 minutes, 10 minutes, just waiting for the presenters to access the link, for them to join. for them to join. Please, if you're already on and you're finding people that are struggling to join the stream, kindly please just let them know that we are live on the page, and they just need to refresh their page. They just need to log on onto the LinkedIn page. Everyone, just give us a second. I'm telling you, technology is showing us flames today. It's just showing us flames. If you want to send us a chat just to, give us some courage for today's broadcast. Okay, the first presenters here. Great. Hi, Puti.
Good afternoon. Just wanted to check the time.
Yes, we will wait for Oliver. Let's give him 2 to 3 minutes. People are scattered all over asking us, asking where the live broadcast is. But I'm sure they will get the hang of it and people will just have to refresh their page because we are live on the page. So if you go onto the LinkedIn page for Road Freight SME Summit, you will see the live, and then you can log in there. Unfortunately, we had to redo another link because the first link was not going through to LinkedIn. And Oliver is here as well. Good afternoon, Oliver. Just unmute yourself.
Oh my word, am I talking to myself again?
Yeah, we have you. We have you. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being patient. And everybody else that is slowly but surely logging into the live broadcast, the masterclass for May. I'm having a lot of people, texting me saying they cannot join, but I believe over time they will find it on the LinkedIn page. It's on the LinkedIn page. It's live on the LinkedIn page. We just had to restart everything. Technology had me by the toes today. So with that, we are going to start because it is recording. So the beautiful thing about these masterclasses is that we record them live. And the people that are not part of it immediately will certainly be part, can rewatch it. And they can also learn from the discussions that we are having. With that said, I am Florence Musundwa, and I am the Road Freight SME Summit convener and founder. And it was really birthed from a need from SME transporters in road freight that we require a platform where we can discuss matters concerning our growth and matters concerning us building sustainable businesses. So that is what the Road Freight SME Summit is about. The masterclasses are activities that we are doing to gearing to October. And also they are here for all you entrepreneurs to discuss, topics and challenges that you're facing on in pursuit to get the solution so that you can build a sustainable business. Then the other thing I want to talk about is we are launching a podcast in June where we will be showcasing inspiring stories for SMEs, inspiring stories about SMEs in road freight. And the podcast is called On the Road Podcast. It's called On the Road Podcast. I will drop the email address if you feel like you want us to share your story, tell your story. We would love to. So if you think that you are, your story is that inspiring and you want everybody to know about it, I will drop the email for you just to send us your company profile and 2 client testimonials, and you can stand the chance of the 15 SMEs that will be profiling from the month of June. So the 2 things are out of the way on my side. Today's masterclass is about increasing efficiency in your trucking company, processes and systems for vertical growth. And I have 2 exceptional industry leaders with us that will be, one presenting and also facilitating. And I'll introduce the first one, which is Ndate Puti, who is by profession a CA. Am I correct, Putin?
You are correct.
Yes, professional as CA and founder of my favorite tagline. The company has my favorite tagline, Guy Kapo Guy, we deliver. But briefly, how I met Ndate Puti, it's last year's, he commented on last year's Road Freight SME Summit speaker flyer. And he said to me, Florence, it's not fully representative. I don't see enough female entrepreneurs on that flyer. There are so many female entrepreneurs on this flyer. And he further engaged the agenda just to make sure that really it's relevant. And that was my introduction to him. So I will make it that personal. And I will give it up to you, sir, for you to just share briefly about your business, today's topic, and the presentation you have. You can share your screen so that I can open it up on my side.
Okay, I'm gonna do that. I'm just worried about my lighting. Am I visible?
Yes, sir, you are. You are. It's the at the back. It's a light background. You're slightly dark. You might just want somebody to switch on the light, but you are visible. We can see
Okay.
you.
All right, perfect. Let me then share. I might while I've shared, I might just move to a brighter place. Let me just get there. See, things work very well during rehearsal, and when it's time to do them, they don't always. Okay.
Today is interesting. I'm telling you.
Yeah, those buttons that we used to use now, they're not wanting to work as well as they did earlier. You know what I'm going to do? I'm gonna send this thing through to you so you can share it from your side.
It might be a challenge. Do you want to talk through it though?
Yeah. Oh, you mean without it being shown?
Yeah, so let's give it a try. Give it another try. We
Okay.
are already here. We are already here.
Okay. I think I'm winning.
Great.
Am I coming through there?
All right. Let's give it. You should be able to. I'm supposed to see the presentation and open it up on the screen.
Are you not seeing it yet?
Not yet, sir.
Okay, let me share, try again. Share screen.
If you're joining us for the first time, I just want to apologize on behalf of technology. Things went so well during dry run, and now we are seeing flames.
You know what I'm going to try and do as the last resort? Should I get out and come back in? Last resort. Otherwise, I'm just going to talk through the slides without showing them. It's not.
All right, let's do this. Can you talk through them? And then during Oliver's presentation, you can email them to me. And then when he's done, we can then show them afterwards. Will that work?
It's a pity because they're pretty great slides.
I know.
But you know what? We are served with what we are served. I think let's just continue. And I'm gonna start first again. If you don't mind, I'm gonna go ahead, Florence.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Everyone watching, apologies for the technology glitches. And I've actually amended my slide a little bit earlier, just to bring in this sort of thing that we are experiencing now when things don't work out, because it's really what usually happens in the industry, right? As introduced, my name is Puti Semenya. I've been in various industries for a long time because I'm an auditor by profession, and as an auditor, you get to be exposed to quite a number of industries, and some I've learned well, some I haven't learned well. And unfortunately, one that I had not learned very well is the logistics industry. Got an opportunity to get into logistics in 2020 in July. And if you recall, that is the time where we had a hard lockdown. Well, we had lockdown, but when I started, it was hard lockdown. So we started because an opportunity came as we were looking for opportunities. And in the process of starting an industry that I've never been in, I've just watched the industry from being an auditor and just understanding what happens in the country. We started on a very wrong footing, and some of these things that I'm saying are wrong footing. You might be experiencing them now. One of the things that we started on a wrong footing with was we started with old fleet. If you drive around the country, especially around Joburg, the Krugersdorp area, in the Boksburg area, you'll find trucks being displayed as trucks for sale, and they will be secondhand. Just be wary of those things. People are selling those things because they've lived their life on their side. So they are old, they retire them, and they sell them to the secondhand market. When you pick them up, do expect that they will give you problems. So we had those problems. We spend a lot of time and money in the workshop fixing the trucks. And that's what I call a wrong footing. And another thing that is very critical is we did not understand the KPIs of the industry. I don't know between old fleet and not understanding the KPIs, which is worse, but it feels like not understanding KPIs is worse than than having old fleet, because you need to understand the costs of the business that you are running so that you know which one to go to when things go bad, which one to fix so that things can go right, etc., etc. So that's key critical, and we started without knowing that and without understanding that. And of course, we did not understand the operational basics of the industry, including, for example, that when you go past a weighbridge, you must be loaded correctly, not for the gross weight only, but also for the axle weights. And those are some of the things, just as an example of things that we started wrongly with. And I can have a long list, and I'm very cognizant of the fact that we've got Mr. Oliver who's going to be really going through the presentation today. So I'm not going to go into these lessons too deep. But I have to say, we had to learn, and we had to learn fast and furious. We had to learn, because if you don't learn fast, you had to face the demise of your business, which means you have to lose all the investments and things like that. So we had to learn, and we had to learn fast. How did we learn? We reached out to people who understand the industry, who've been in the industry, who have walked the path. In my language, loosely translated, we asked for directions from the people who've been on the road in the earlier times. So we had to look for those people, and we had to sit with them and understand what it is that they had to learn and how they make their businesses fly. So what are some of these lessons learned? We had to understand the KPIs and watch them like a hawk. When you know that your truck has to do so many liters per 100 kilometers, you have to watch that and make sure you watch that like a hawk. When a driver comes back and they were supposed to spend 40 liters and they've spent 50 liters, you need to sit them down, because there might be a problem with the driver, or there might be a problem with the truck. You need to diagnose fast, so that thing doesn't continue, because that's eating into your sustainability. I'm not even saying profitability, it's eating into your sustainability. The other thing that we had to learn fast was maintenance, regular maintenance. When you don't do regular maintenance, which is generally a planned maintenance, you go into a realm of emergency maintenance, and that is hard. Let me give you an example. When you negotiate for a tire, you might be able to find a tire between 4,000 and 8,000 rands, depending on the quality that you are buying. And you will choose which price for which quality. That is when you have planned things. But if you let your tire wear because you are trying to save the little cents, and you go with very small thread, you may find yourself with a breakdown of a tire burst on the side of the road. Do you know what's the price on the side of the road? Nobody knows. So the price is going to be influenced by how far you are from the person who's going to help you. So you start paying the kilometers to bring the tire to you, and then you're going to pay exorbitant prices. A tire that you probably have paid for 4,005 or 5,000, you might buy that same tire of that low quality, generally imported. You might buy the same thing for 8,000 to 10,000 rand, and the breakdown costs, the labor, etc., etc. The tire that could have cost you 5,000 now can cost you up to 12,000. That is emergency maintenance. That's what it does. I can say the same thing about the parts, many other things that make this asset move. If you don't look after them through planned regular maintenance, you will be forced to maintain it on the side of the road, and that eats into your profitability and sustainability. Another one that we had to learn, and learn fast, is driver training. The drivers will come with their licenses. Some of them, we don't know how they got their licenses. Well, but they've got the licenses, right? They might have used the regular route of going to the driving school, learning, etc. Others might use the route of getting it through the back door, but at least they can drive. But they can drive because they can steer the wheel, they can go through the poles, etc., etc. But when it comes to asset care, they don't know much. Safety, they don't know much. The driving that is focused on looking after the asset from asset care perspective and efficiency. How do you drive to make sure that you don't wear the brakes? How do you drive to make sure that you don't use too much fuel? How do you drive to make sure that you don't have too many stops? Even the times of the driving. So the driver needs to be trained and trained wholesomely. you will get training for drivers, anything from 1,500 to about 4,500. That's what I've encountered. And it sounds expensive. But when you calculate how much the fuel saving, let's just talk to fuel saving alone for a month, depending on how many kilometers you travel, you may save quite a great deal by just paying that once off 4,500, considering, assuming that the person stays with you for a long time. But if they don't stay with you for a long time and you don't pay that amount, still you're risking having to pay more for the diesel, more for the tires, more for the brakes, etc., etc. So driver training is as important as the fitness of your fleet. The other thing that we have to learn is load optimization. We like overloading because then because if you charge per ton, which is mostly what happens in the industry. I'm talking mainly on the heavy duty side of things. We get paid per ton. So if I load 30 tons and I could load 36 tons, I get 6 tons extra, and therefore that much more revenue. But what you don't realize is you're actually wearing your asset quicker. The reason why there are these regulations about the axle weights and all those things is so that your asset is balanced so that it doesn't damage the road. Now, you may not care about the road for whatever reason, and you overload the asset. You don't realize that you're actually damaging the asset. You're wearing it faster. If the asset was supposed to take 5 years to wear, yours might take 2 years or might take 2.5 years because of not optimizing the load. And then the other thing is route optimization that we had to learn fast. The truck only gets paid when it's moving and it's moving with a load. And I think I need to repeat this. It only gets paid when it's moving and it's moving with a load. That means that once you have taken the load out and you come back maybe to your depot, that comeback leg, yes, you price for it, but it's not optimal. If you networked enough with colleagues in your industry, you could be, let's say you went to Rustenburg from Witbank, and now you need to go back to Witbank. If you can find something to take back to Witbank, that would be a great way of optimizing your route. And when we're talking about route optimization of route, we could also be talking about how many kilometers you travel, which road you use. You could choose to use N4, and you're thinking it's got toll gates. Nah, I'm not using N4. And you're looking at a regional road or municipal road, doesn't have those way bridges. It doesn't have tolling fees. But when you use the alternative road, it might be more kilometers. Even when it's more kilometers, it's less kilometers, it might be a lot of potholes. You are again damaging your asset. So those are the things that we have to learn. Another critical one, and I'm going to stop because I don't want to waste too much of the time for everyone else on the call. The tires, they wear quicker when they are not looked after. There is a minimum that your tire must be at in terms of inflation rate. It must be inflated to a rate of, if it's heavy duty, anything between 750 and 850 or 700 and 850. It works better if all your tires, if you've chosen that yours is, because there's a lot of debate about this, but if you choose for any reason that yours is 800, it can be between 700 and 850 on that truck. On that truck must be balanced. All your tires must be 800, because then they're pulling at the same rate. They're moving together in tandem. If they were, the other thing is the threat level. If they are similar threat level, that truck is moving seamlessly. One way of putting it is, say you've got two types of sports shoes. You've got your soccer boots and you've got your running shoes. You will not one day say, okay, they're all sports shoes. Let me put the running shoe on the right and the soccer boot on the left. You're not gonna enjoy the way you walk. It's the same with the trucks. So the tires must be managed in such a way that they are almost equal wear on the truck, and they are inflated correctly, and they are aligned at all times. You make sure that you know your route that you travel. If you travel a very bad route, you wanna, if you could afford it, you wanna actually align your truck every week or two to make sure that the truck is still nicely balanced. It's not wearing, it's not eating the tires on the edges, etc., etc. And you would know about this. But the thing that I added because of what happened this morning when things didn't work out is communication. Communication is one of the things that adds to the efficiency of your running of your business. So in the industry, we understand that at a level of speed that your truck, whichever make it is, you will know that if it's a Mercedes-Benz, maybe it needs to be running at between 80 and 90 kilometers per hour. That's where it is more efficient. When you're running at 60, is less efficient. Okay, we want to run at 75 to 85 or to 90. That's where we should be running. If you have a breakdown, for example, and the client was expecting your load to arrive at 10, and you realize you're not going to be able to make 10, immediately when you've got a breakdown, you need to communicate to the client. The reason for that, among many other reasons, from an efficiency perspective, is that you're not going to have to drive under pressure, meaning you might not have, if you don't communicate, you might have to speed to try and make up the time. But if you tell the client, look, I've got a breakdown, the tire, or it is this or it is that, the mechanics are en route to go and sort out the problem. I will give you the new estimated arrival time once we've sorted the problem. You don't have stress anymore because they know not to expect the load when it was supposed to be expected. Therefore, you can do things in the normal way. You can still fix the truck and drive at normal speed towards your destination. So communication is very important. It actually even reduces the accidents that you could have on the road because your driver is no longer under pressure to arrive at 10. They know because of what was unforeseen, they are now allowed to arrive at 3. So they can drive like a person who is going to arrive at 3 versus the person who's going to arrive at 10. So those are some of the things that I thought we needed to share this morning before we lead to the main discussion of the day. Oliver is known to the industry. He's been doing this thing. I don't know if Oliver, you'll tell us how long you've been doing this, but you've focused on standards and among other many important things. But with the standards, you know that you get the compliance, you get the efficiency and things like that. But you want to bring us deeper into this discussion, and we can have the discussion that you and I had earlier this morning and all those months ago about, how do we make sure that everybody complies to the standards and they benefit from the knowledge about the ISO standards and other many important standards. Oliver, I think I'm going to pause here. I will be listening attentively because I'm going to ask you a few difficult questions at the end of this discussion. Florence, I think it's Oliver's time now.
Well, Putti, before you go, man, I've got to tell you, you said at the beginning you were not going to take my thunder. You took my thunder and the lightning with it. And I have to applaud you because what you've done, you set an ideal platform for me to now talk about regulation. But what you've done, and without probably realizing it, you've shown the business benefits of doing the right thing. So I have to say, I could have listened to you for at least another hour or two, absolutely with pleasure. So yeah, anyway, we'll talk later about some other ideas I have. Florence, over to you, my dear. Oh, I can
Yes,
get going.
sir, I'm
Sorry.
here. Can you share your presentation?
Let's hope I don't have the same
I am.
challenge. Is that visible?
Yay!
Yes.
Oh, there we
Lovely.
go.
Great. All
Long
right, Oliver.
title.
Great. We will be behind the scenes. The stage is yours, sir.
Okay, so I can see my full screen presentation and I can't see anything in the background. If something goes wrong, Florence, will you shout at me?
Yes, sir. I've got you. I'm here.
Excellent. So like I said, Pooty, I mean, you just laid an incredible platform from the other side. You've been in business, you've done these things that I'm going to talk about now, and you've seen it not as things you were forced to do, but things you had to do to be safe and sustainable. And it is really two sides of the same coin. So let's get into the session today. Thanks, Florence, for setting up these kind of forums. I think there's a huge need in our country to bring awareness, information to our transport community so we can all play on the same field and we can all fully play the role we need to in the broader economy that that we need to be involved in. So vertical growth, in terms of the title Florence has chosen, it's about how does one in the transport sector plant your roots firmly into your business, and how do you grow, and expand one's scope of activities related to your core function. So we're not talking here about diversifying, but how do you, in your current business, ensure that the roots are firm, you get sufficient nourishment, nutrients, so to speak, so the business can grow. One of the things that, as an entrepreneur or as a business owner, one has to be constantly conscious of the need to change, especially in the current economy and the quickly advancing technological times we live in. So assessing one's operational processes is an absolutely fundamental thing that any business should do, not just in road transport. And in doing that, one needs to look at conducting a review of your existing processes. Uh, Pooty mentioned the word disruption and being a disruptor in the industry. And so if we are to get traction or actually gain momentum rather, we need to look at reviewing how we do business, reviewing our processes, and again, as Pooty mentioned, I told you he took my thunder, how do we identify key performance indicators? There's an old adage which is familiar to old people like myself, and it says you cannot improve what you don't measure. It's like shooting in the dark. You might have a transport business. You may be doing 500 trips a month or less or more, whatever it may be. But are you looking at purely your turnover? Are you looking at just your profit? And you're assuming if you're making 5% margin or 10% margin, that hey, you're doing okay. What about the hidden profit that you're losing? What about the increased turnover that you're losing purely because you don't have a structured KPI system or performance indicators that can guide you and point you as to what are the fundamentals in the business that can be improved on? So this is something really important, and I'll talk later on about the types of KPIs one could consider. Fuel consumption is an absolutely critical one. Tire management and the CPKs around both of those. If you're in transport, you will know tires and diesel. That is something you if you don't manage well, you'll be out of business very quickly. Some of the things one could consider, and this is something that is a separate topic on its own, but having process mapping. In simple language, it's simply putting on paper your process and trying to identify where are the bottlenecks. what are you doing well, improving on the stuff you're doing well, and looking at identifying what is not so great and doing something about it. Pooty mentioned again, and I'm going to quote him often because I feel he almost took my presentation, which is awesome. He said at the beginning of his presentation that he went looking for opportunities. And yes, people are always saying that the economy is tough, and that is true. But I believe that as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, one has to look at in the market, how can you penetrate the market? What opportunities are there? And a part of the whole aspect of growing and looking at growth opportunities is how does one form strategic partnerships with stakeholders that have the same vision as what you have to leverage knowledge and to leverage um, business opportunities. So I think partnerships are key entity or key element rather of a growing business. Collaborations and alliances with other industry players. No man is an island. I think it was John Donne who said that. And sometimes, as business owners, we can often, forget that we work in a dynamic environment where we need help, we need to give help, and we need to talk to each other. And of course, customizing one's services to meet client needs. If you have a client and if you do business the same way, trip day in and day out, you'll just be a transporter for the client. But how can you customize your service? How can you add value to your client so they can see you not just as a subcontracted transporter or a transport contractor, but they can see you as a partner in their business. So these are some of the key aspects one should consider. And I'm just kind of laying the platform for the need to look at regulations, but not look at regulations as something that stifles business, but rather how does regulation provide a platform and a foundation so you can grow your business knowing that there isn't some rung that's going to fall out or some element that's missing which could cause a major disruption in your business. So I'll be talking through that for most of the next 15 or 20 minutes or so, I think. So how does one stay compliant with industry regulations? I'll provide in the next few minutes an overview of some key regulations affecting our sector. I'll be looking at using a national standard called the RTMS, looking at using that compliance management system as a tool for not just protecting your business and talking about legal liability issues, but also for using a tool like that to build sustainability whilst you're pursuing growth in the business. And I look forward to Puti's questions later on. And why I think I'm so excited about his angle is because he's come from a business. I mean, he's a businessman, right? He won't do something technically or in operations unless it adds value and contributes to the bottom line and profitability. So I see a great marriage in terms of regulation, operations, working together to achieve efficiency, profitability, and ultimately sustainability. And that word it's pretty much flavor of the month nowadays. But sustainability is about how do we ensure that the business is not just achieving short-term returns or profit, but how do you invest continually in the business so it's a wheel that turns for a long term and not just in the short term. Monitoring is a crucial component of process efficiency, and if you do not track performance, you're likely to have a business that will not grow at the rate you'd want it to. And worst case, if you don't track performance, the business is unlikely to be a successful one. So things like performance reviews and audits are essential. Financial audits obviously are critical because that will, ensure or identify rather controls that may be lacking. It will identify um, the numbers that will provide you with information on where the gaps are or what the costs are that might be out of control. Our aspect or our view of audits is when it comes to auditing the operations to comply not just with regulation, but also with best practice so that you can build in the required tools. And of course, any growth strategy will need to be based on data. We do a fair amount of audits for ISO 9001, and that's a whole management system that's aimed at delivering high quality products or services to the market. And a key part of that standard and other ISO standards is managing and decision making through the use of data. So you've look in an entrepreneur's journey, I'm well aware at the very early stages of birth, there's a lot of intuition that's needed to get the business off the ground. Sometimes it's a thumb suck, and often it's just a gut feel that gets you onto the field, so to speak. But once you're there, intuition is still vital. We know that, but data and the use of data is will be critical if you are to grow from a micro or a survival enterprise into a business that is a serious player in the market. Okay, so I'm going to now uh, I'm going to now follow on the theme that Poochie's introduced, but I'm going to look at stuff he's mentioned already and how that is a key component of regulation and best practice. He's already mentioned why it's beneficial for the operation, and I'm going to show you the standard or standards rather, and how these advocate systems or framework that delivers on safety, delivers on compliance with regulations and good practice, and perhaps most importantly, for us as entrepreneurs or SME businesses, how does it deliver on making a difference in our operations so we can grow the business? Okay, it's based on, in my discussions now, on a national standard called RTMS, and it's essentially, this standard provides a framework for any commercial fleet operation um, that wants to comply with not just legal requirements, but best practice as well. Now, this standard can be applied to consignors, so companies or big business that offers goods for transport. It's very much applicable for the transporter, and it can also be adopted by consignees, those who are receiving goods um, from the consignor. There are four main areas that what I would say is the core criteria of the standard, and these are what I would say are the building blocks for vertical growth in one's freight business or transport business. Loading control, and we talk here about payload management, compliance with the mass limits, safe loading, and load optimization. Um, Maybe I'll mention it later, but in case I forget, I'll say it now again. If you're underloading your vehicle, you're losing money. If you're overloading your vehicle, you may think you're making extra money from the increased payload, but the wear and tear on the truck, on the suspension, on the chassis, the increased pressure on the braking system, and the potential for compromised braking, all of that is not ideal. The second pillar is around safety, safety of the vehicles and safe operation. So we're going to look at vehicle maintenance and how do we operate the vehicles safely as well. Driver wellness has been marginalized to a large extent in our industry. And I think we're seeing the consequence of not adequately equipping our drivers, not adequately ensuring they're well fit and of course trained to perform at the levels that we expect of our driving staff. So the RTMS in any management system looks at how does one as an SME transporter implement a structured system. Like I've mentioned, when you're starting off, you're probably not that structured, and that's understandable. You're getting into the market, but as you begin to become a formal business, and as you begin to want to enter into the larger contracts with the bigger players, you'll need to structure your business. And this is just a platform, the RTMS standard, which I'll use to show how one can structure and what elements would need to be considered in structuring the business. The little bullet at the bottom there called self-regulation, sustainable. You know, if you look at if one thinks of enforcement, enforcement or law enforcement can never fix any problem in the world in any sector, be it in the mining sector, agric, certainly not in transport. So for a business to be sustainable, yes, there's a role for regulation and for government and for enforcement, but self-regulation. In other words, how do you as a business owner regulate how the wheels turn so that it is sustainable? And it boils down to pretty much a few things, but one of them is doing the right thing. So this is just another concept that relates to the whole methodology of self-regulation, which is a common one for any international standard. So one would need to plan, and planning means you develop certain policies, certain procedures for your business and processes. So things like how do you load the trucks? If it's a long distance trip, where do the drivers sleep? Who does tire management? Who monitors vehicle telematics? So you have policies saying who does what and when do they do it. And if you don't have these in place, if you don't have a structured plan in place, it means if you have new people coming into the business, they don't have a blueprint to work from, and that can be catastrophic. If you've got staff turnover and somebody new comes into the business and they haven't a clue, you know, how do the telematics work, or how do you rotate tires, things like are quite normal in a business. So having these procedures and plans are fundamental. And then the second component of this concept is doing or implementing the requirements. As I've mentioned earlier, checking, monitoring of KPIs helps us to identify any unacceptable risks in the business that are diagnosed from the monitoring function, and then taking action to mitigate not just risks, but taking action to mitigate any underperforming areas or any areas of concern. Okay, that's the 13 elements in the standard, and I'm not going to go into that in any level of detail because I'm aware that we do have limited time. So when we talk about fleet vehicles, there's a need to have certain fundamentals in place. So if you've got 5 trucks, do you know when the licenses or permits expire? It's a simple thing to do, but if that isn't done, it can have catastrophic events if the truck's involved in a crash, or if there are other issues that could occur, especially in terms of your brand and your business brand. Loading control is absolutely critical. Now, for 2 reasons. One is, sure, it is legal compliance. So if you go to the weighbridge and you overload it on your combination mass, which currently for a 22-meter vehicle combination is 56 tons, but also one has to load to comply with the legal mass limits in terms of axles. So why do we do this? One, to make sure you don't get traffic fines. But secondly, and in my view, more importantly, if a vehicle is overloaded, it compromises the vehicle safety. So the vehicle doesn't handle the same. The brakes won't work this as it was intended to work by the manufacturer. You've got your suspensions taking a beating. When the driver does an evasive maneuver, because it's heavier, it's very more likely to roll over. And do you want to have all these high risk behaviors purely because you aren't having a system to load the vehicles correctly? That's just a slide to show what the relevant axle limits are, but I won't dwell too much on that. Now, when you load trucks, the method could include physical weighing, or it might be via a unit mass. So if you know the number of units and you know the unit mass, you can pretty much calculate what the total tonnage is. If you're loading by volume, one could also look at volumetric loading, and by applying the specific gravity for the product, you could work out your tonnage. It's also important in developing structure is to ensure that there's some evidence or source document that your load assessment method is correct, and you could do it at a weighbridge ticket, or if you're lucky enough to be at a site, a loading site that does have a weighbridge, you'd get this offhand from them. And the idea is to obviously minimize overloading for the reasons we've mentioned. The other thing which Putty touched on as well was overloading damages our road networks. If we don't have good roads, okay, we're very fortunate, like the N1, the N2, the N3, etc. These roads are maintained at the highest quality standards in the world. So we're very fortunate that we have a Sanral. In fact, Sanral are probably the best performing state-owned enterprise in my view, because they keep those roads in a great condition, which allows for the flow of goods, which is critical for the economy. Can you imagine if we didn't have the national roads we have? It'll have a massively negative impact on the economy, and that affects each one of us and our families. Okay, I'm going a little bit off track, but I feel strongly about that. When we talk about loading, it doesn't matter which sector you're in, whether it's abnormal loads, dangerous goods. Yesterday, I was at a forum, a fleet watch, brake and tire watch in Durban. And one of the municipal people in the fire department was talking about the large number of dangerous goods transporters transporting fuel or chemicals that do not comply with the SAN standard. And they were saying they were thinking of taking away, dangerous goods permits from these operators. And if that were to happen and you in that sector, it will stop your business from operating. So let's move on. Now, driving at a safe speed will require for one to have a speed policy in place. So driving at the right speed is not just about complying with the speed limit, although that is important, especially with the potential or pending implementation of ARTO, the demerit point system. But in my view, the speed policy is less about complying with regulations, and it's more about A, protecting your asset from accidents, and B, saving fuel. If there's one exercise I would have loved to try over the years, it's to strap a boiled egg, or sorry, not a boiled egg, it's to strap an egg, an uncooked egg, onto the accelerator of a truck with a rubber band or something like that, and the driver should drive with that fragile egg, so it doesn't press too harshly. If we could just avoid harsh acceleration, we would save in a small business hundreds of thousands of rands in fuel alone over the life cycle of the vehicle. So that's just on speed. But long story short, speed has no positive impact. If the driver is traveling faster than he should, he might, in his mind, have the perception that he's gaining kilometers. But the reality is he loses whatever he's gained very quickly. So he might gain a few hundred meters, but there'll be another truck in front of him, or another vehicle, or a toll gate or something, and he loses. So the perceptive gain in speed does not warrant the lost savings in fuel, and does not warrant the exceptional high risk of traveling at an unsafe speed. That's just an example of a typical speed policy. And so, telematics is an absolutely critical tool that we should be using as SME transporters. We often do little talks in association with the telematics providers. And yesterday, not yesterday, a few days ago, I was at a forum where we shared the platform with Mix Telematics, who are quite a reputable provider. And they were saying a large number of transporters have this high quality telematics device and platform, but all they use it for is tracking location. And that is like, it's like buying a Ferrari and keeping it in the garage and never driving it. So if you have telematics on your vehicle, it has incredible functionality. It'll tell you not just where the vehicle is, it'll tell you if the driver is driving the asset correctly, things like harsh braking, harsh acceleration, lane change. Even nowadays, they have lane change detection, all sorts of data that will provide you with information to say, hey, is your asset being managed properly? And of course, is fuel being used adequately and correctly, etc. So using telematics to make decisions is crucial. The one thing I didn't cover earlier, I actually took out quite a number of slides because I realized the time was limited. Vehicle selections. When you are purchasing a vehicle, one should never look at the cost of the vehicle in making a purchase decision alone. Cost is important, but you should look at what application will the vehicle be used in? What commodity are you loading? So you look at the total life cycle. So even the vehicle fuel efficiency should be looked at. What is the application? Are you loading timber? Are you loading fuel? Will it be on an N3 route or will it be on a forest somewhere, on a mine site? So you take all these factors in when you're purchasing a vehicle. So you purchase the right vehicle for the right application with the correct gear ratio, the correct kilowatt rating, and all of these factors that need to be considered. So you never look at a truck purchase as purely price only. You look at what is the intended application, and on that basis, you look at your purchase. Okay, accidents and incidents are something none of us like to have, but the reality is, especially with the roads being as high risk as they are, we contend with these things. But what's important is and the point here I'd like to make is to use information in your business, incidents, and try and understand where are the major areas in your transport business that's causing you problems, either on the road, in the yard, at the client site, and to put that information onto some kind of a reporting tool. Because what will happen is, colleagues, sometimes things happen and go wrong. We have a knee-jerk reaction. Everybody gets all excited. We try and blame the poor driver often, or just have a knee-jerk and a quick response, and we forget about that and the learning from it. So having a structured way of documenting all these little bits and pieces. So at the year end, the management team will look at, hey, we've had 14 incidents on the mine. We've had 8 breakdowns. And all of this information helps you to plan to avoid recurring incidents that can hurt your business and even cause the business to fail. And if we look at incident investigation, you want to further drill down as to what caused it, like distracted driving. And I really would like us to consider some policy on the use of cell phones. Not a day goes by, and I'm sure we're all aware of it, where you don't see somebody. I was in the N3 yesterday, and there was a lady driving next to me. She was literally watching a video on her phone, and doing that. And it was quite dense traffic. Anyway, but these are high-risk behaviors that in your building blocks for your business, you should have policies on. It'll just take one major accident with your truck to damage your brand, damage your business, lose a client contract very easily. Many of you would in the industry would know a few years back, I can't mention names, but there was a transport company that had a contract at a mine, and this contract went back, I think 25 years. 25 years of consistent delivery. And as Murphy's Law had it, they did then employ a subcontractor to do some work on the same mine. The subcontractor, I think it was a fatality. Yeah, it was a fatality that happened on site. The subcontractor didn't do something he should have done, killed one of the mine employees. And after 25 years, that company lost the contract just pretty much overnight. And I say that not to put fear, but that's the reality. It takes years and years of hard work to build your brand, to build your business. But just one or two slight infractions can damage one's brand very, very quickly. And especially in today's day of social media, everyone's reporting on everything. Yeah, but anyway, traffic fines is something which is what I call a diagnostic. So if you're getting a large number of traffic fines, it's likely to show that there's bad behavior, which is damaging your asset, increasing the risk of collision, and it's just bad publicity for your business. And I just want to play a video, I think, in the next slide, to avoid talking through the whole ARTO demerit point system, which the Department of Transport has said is coming quite soon. So this video will just explain it in, I think, 3 or 4 minutes, what the potential impact is for a driving license. And it also applies to vehicles. So if your truck is constantly incurring traffic fines, your truck could be suspended from operation. You could have the license disc or the operator card removed as well. So it's a high risk if you are not compliant. So let's watch the video. It'll give you a snapshot and then we can move on. Hope it, there we go. Is the video playing and sound, Florence?
No, the sound is not audible. We can see the video, but the sound is not audible.
Okay, let me reshare sound. Give me a second, please.
All right. Just as Oliver's resharing and sharing sound, I just want to make an announcement that everyone that we missed because of the new link, we have emailed them the recording link. So I'm sure all over 100 people that had registered will have access to this recording, and I will be posting it throughout of next week, because we would like the information to reach each and everybody that is interested. Are you winning,
Okay,
Oliver?
I
Yeah.
think so. Let's give it a shot. There we go.
Okay. Nope. We're not hearing the sound. It's this virtual
Okay.
studio. Today it's not with us.
Okay, I'll skip it then. It's fine. I'll just. So what can you see right now?
We don't see your presentation. You'll have to share your presentation again, and I think you'll have to move to the next slide.
Okay, give me a seckie. Okay, I've just got to do one thing quickly on my side. Yeah, technology is always an issue, but you know what? It's life, eh? It's a constant changing environment that we have to prepare for, and this is just another way of dealing with it. Okay, there we go.
100. Okay.
Okay, that should be up on your screen now. So I'm going to skip this because it isn't playing. But effectively, still nothing, hey? No.
It's
Okay.
playing, but we can't hear the audio.
Okay. So I'll skip it. In a nutshell, when Auto is implemented, if you have vehicles or drivers that are incurring traffic fines continuously, once they incur 15 points, the truck and or the driver will be suspended from driving or operation. So just be aware of that. Okay, the next area to look at is vehicle maintenance. Again, Pooty stole my thunder, but he put it so well. If your vehicles are not maintained, you're going to have a breakdown. And if you break down in the wrong part of town or wrong part of the country, the cost of getting that truck back is one thing. Not supplying on your client needs is another. The risk of being stuck on a road is so there's it's just not something we want to have in our business. And the only way you can prevent that is by having a vehicle maintenance schedule that indicates for each truck in your fleet, how do you service them, at what intervals do you service them on, etc. And to have records available. Tires, I know last week George van Heerden, who's really a tire expert, he covered this in some detail, but things like tire surveys, inflation pressure, tread depth, it's not just doing something that's a legal requirement. These have a massive impact. If your tire is, for example, underinflated, it affects the truck's rolling resistance, which means the driver has to use more fuel to cover the same distance. So you're using more fuel, the tires are getting damaged. Other things, if the tires are not having mismatched tires on the same axle unit, causes undue wear. There's so many things one could talk about on tires or vehicle maintenance, all of which might seem like a schlep or regulation, but the real value add is in building efficiency into your operation. Okay, another slide is showing that one should do tire surveys at a frequency, pre-trip inspection. If the vehicle is not checked before it leaves, it's a massive risk. And building in this kind of structure would prevent things from going wrong. Driver wellness, are you checking your drivers for medical fitness? Do you have a fatigue management plan in place? And I should say this, I've audited probably 700 companies, I think, if I look at on average over the last 15 years. And the one thing that often strikes me is, to a large extent, how drivers have been marginalized, where we don't really give them adequate attention. We don't empower them with knowledge. We don't check on their wellness. And we just assume that they will do the job. It's like expecting a truck to drive itself without adequate maintenance. It's the same thing. So I think a key part of, maybe I'll just save it for the next slide, a key part of building sustainable businesses and achieving vertical growth is by really taking care of the man or woman behind the wheel, and by looking at how can we change the culture of the drivers on the road. Planned training, briefing and debriefing, toolbox talks. And what you'll find, especially if you are relatively small, you create almost a family environment where the drivers feel a sense of ownership in the business if they're involved in decision making, if they're involved in understanding why they're doing certain things. So just telling a driver, you must comply with the speed limit or you must check your tires won't work. But if you explain to him the whys and you involve him in that and possibly look at compensating him fairly, either via reward, it will make a difference. It's the only way, I believe, to build sustainable businesses, because the drivers are a critical component of any business. And I think probably the most vital, because you can have awesome technology, fantastic trucks, a great business process. But if the person in the vehicle that's representing you at the client interface is not feel a part of that business, it's not that likely for that business to really grow in the way that it probably should. Okay, so monitoring, coaching of the drivers is crucial. And that's just an example of the typical driver training content. And it's called defensive driving. And it's training the drivers on how to be constantly scanning the environment to obviously prevent crashes or collisions, primarily, but also to get the product to the client on time and in the right condition. Fatigue management is crucial. I'm not going to spend too much of time there. And having documents and records for an audit is a requirement of the standard. Then we also look at, from a management perspective, monitoring of KPIs and auditing the processes to ensure that there is compliance with the requirements. Okay, so in conclusion, those icons indicate some of the key requirements of the standard and of management systems, but all of them, if you look at it, are fundamental aspects that one should build into your road freight business if you are to maintain your contracts and maintain delivering to clients. And there is one more video, but it probably won't play, so I'm not going to bother sharing that. Okay, so just to recap, strategies for vertical growth will be to build sustainable mechanisms into one's business that focuses on the vehicle or the asset, that focuses on the process or operations, and the driver. So the key strategies are focusing on those elements, and it is important to have a holistic approach to growth. So it's not just the truck or just the driver or just the operations or just the marketing. And on marketing, I should say, one should market the business. So tell a good story. If you have done, even if you're quite small and you have done just 100 loads, do a little story of the 100 loads. Tell people about what you're doing. So it's part of just your business management is to market and tell a good story about your business and to have a very holistic approach to growth. And as I've said at the very outset, and I'll repeat it, implement and continuously refine strategies. They say the only constant in life is change. So if we think we've got a reasonably good business model and we in a box, a few years from now, we could easily become obsolete. So think disruption, think innovation, think continual improvement as part of your business growth strategy. And on that note, I think Pooty will now ask me some questions and take the discussion further.
Wow. Oliver, that's why they call it a masterclass. It's a class that is run by a master, and you are indeed. I think we've picked up a lot of nuggets from what you've been saying in the past while, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna ask questions and I'm gonna emphasize some of the things that I enjoyed. But I also am going to ask for the people that are on the live chat or on the broadcast to also ask questions. They can post. I can see the posts that have been coming through on the side, and if those posts also have questions, we would like to get those questions asked. But what I've enjoyed, and I'm sure that everyone as industry players, we are listening to what Oliver is saying, and we are also taking that and look and introspecting and saying, what is being said? What can I use it to improve our operation, to improve our business? Because when you live in your business, you tend to start not seeing things. Even when you start dropping the good things that you were doing, you stop doing them. You don't realize until you hear someone saying something and say, oh, actually, I used to do that, but I've stopped. I need to go back and do it. And I have learned. I mean, you started with the strategies, and then you went into the meat of your presentation with the vehicles, with the processes, and with the drivers, and all of those things. There are things that I can sit here and say that we do, and there are things that I can say that we're not doing, we've never done, or we're not doing anymore. And that's I think that's the great input about this. So some of the things that I I've picked up from what you've said, you cannot grow without utilizing the data of your own business. Yes, you can use other external data, but you have to use the data of your own business to see how it's been running, and as you grow it, how it's going to grow. I think that's quite important. You can't. I mean, we're talking about vertical growth. Vertical growth cannot happen without you knowing what you're doing. The standard operating procedures, that driver training, those asset cares, those are quite important. And one that I think we do, but we don't do as often as we should, is, yes, we're talking about driver training, we're talking about driver wellness, but we're not talking about driver wellness with intentionality. We need to be even more intentional about driver wellness. I mean, if we are to be truthful, you look at the driver, yes, they get their meal allowance and all those things, but what they typically do, what do they eat? If a driver starts at your operation as a size 32, isn't there something to be said if in a year's time he's a size 42? We need to have those discussions, and some of the discussions are not comfortable discussions. But they say diamonds were not made from a comfortable situation. There had to be a lot of fire, a lot of uncomfortableness, and those things we've got to be bold enough as leaders, as business owners, to say these are the things that we need to do to make sure that we improve as businesses, but we improve as an industry. You've spoken about collaboration, partnerships. Those are quite important to learn from, also to, as they call it, to cooperate, to compete while cooperating. I can't remember how that word is structured. But Oliver, I need to ask you a question about the loading control. And I'm asking the question at the same time as crying out for help as an industry. Obviously, as individual, as a business, but as an industry. So in 2015, the law was promulgated that the loading is the responsibility of the consignor. And that law has not been learned by the consignor. Consignor would be the person who's giving you their goods for you to go and deliver. So what typically would happen, and I don't know if the law enforcers really understand that. So when I go from point A to point B, but along the road there is a weigh bridge and my truck gets stopped and we find that it's not loaded correctly, I get a ticket, but that ticket belongs to the consignor. And at the beginning, with some of our customers, we struggled to enforce that with them, to say, this is your ticket, it's not mine. And here's the law that says it's your ticket. It was difficult, but they started learning that actually, because they were not aware. Actually, right. the balancing of the load is my responsibility as a consignor. So I'm asking for you, from an RTMS perspective, as a person who is policing the standards, to start spreading the gospel to the consignors to say, do you know that this is your responsibility? And it is a little bit of a difficult responsibility to implement, because as we engage our customers, we find that, one, they don't know. Two, and this is the cost part of it, their equipment, their weigh bridges, their in-house weigh bridges are not designed to do the actual weights. They are designed to do the gross weight. And to invest in a weigh bridge is a lot of money. But there could be possibility that there are new weigh bridges being bought that are not in compliance with the requirement of the South African regulations. And that's where we need, and Oliver Naidoo to go out there and say, guys, do you understand that what this means? So when the customers say to us, to do this tender or to do these transactions with us, you need to comply to RTMS. We say all and good, it's fair. The problem is they don't understand their responsibility in that.
Yeah.
And that responsibility starts with the loading processes of on their side. So do you think it's something, I mean, I want to hear a little bit about this from your perspective, whether you've experienced this with our customers, with your clients as well, to say, do they really understand that part of their responsibility, and how are they implementing it, or how are they planning to implement it at least?
Putty, it's a good question, and I think it's a complex one. You're quite right. I mean, those regulations were promulgated in October 2014, and it spoke to consignor regulations. It's section 330A to D. And those regs effectively said, if I'm a consignor and I'm transporting more than 600 tons of product per month, then I need to ensure before the truck leaves my facility, two things happen. One, the truck is safe, and two, the truck complies with the legal mass limits. We're now almost 10 years down the road from the promulgation of the consignee regulations, and we've not had a single prosecution, not one. The reason for that, I can't quite be sure, but the one big issue is that the enforcement officials, they have no idea how do they gauge which consignors are transporting more than 600 tons a month and who to prosecute. But having said that, Putti, it's a battle we must continue to fight. From an RTMS point of view, we continue to lobby, and the mining sector through Mincosa, the agribusiness sector, forestry, and a lot of them are aware of it. But because it's not been enforced and there hasn't been a precedent set in the court of law, there seems to be a tendency, it's still the transporter's baby, which is absolutely not correct. It's a shared responsibility. The consignor must make provision for compliance and the transporter. The second point you mentioned was, about the weigh bridges. Look, it's not practical to expect what we call a split level weigh bridge to measure axles on every site. It's far too expensive and it's just not economically feasible. But what is expected is, even if it's a single deck weigh bridge, at least a combination mass is known, and through loading and spreading the load out across the axles, one can theoretically comply with the axle limits. But in the bulk sector, Putti, I mean, you would know, when the truck goes up a hill, you've got load shifting. So even though you might start off compliant on the axle limits, as you go up a hill or down a hill, that load's going to shift. So you still might have those issues to deal with. Solution, lobbying. We've got to make more bigger players, the mining houses and other players, more aware of their responsibility. And I hope personally we get a legal precedent soon. But to be honest with you, it doesn't seem very likely in the short term.
The lobbying that you're doing, it sounds like you're doing with the mining sector, etc., etc. Is there any lobbying that is going on the government side, on the regulator's side of things?
Look, I'm on the RTMS National Committee, and on that committee, the RTMC, the law enforcement people are there, National Department of Transport are there, there's somebody from RTIA, Road Traffic Infringement Agency, on the SABS Technical Committee as well. There is government people on those committees. And what should happen, Putti, is that those government representatives on these, they are well aware of the regs. They ought to then go back to their powers that be and get the machine to start enforcing it. That is where I think the gap is. The
Yeah.
government reps are aware, but there seems to be lack of political will or other factors that's not making that a tangible reality on the ground.
They are aware, but do they understand the, I might be putting my foot in it here, but do they understand the impact and the practical implications of that? Do they not need a little bit of a push from a person outside of themselves that says, you guys are aware of these are the practical implications on the ground, these are what the clients well, the consigner is faced with big investments, etc. But this then is what the transporter is faced with, because the big investment cannot be made. Then the transporter goes with the risk of having to be stuck at a way bridge, which affects the economy directly. Because
Yeah.
if Woolworths has got a load that is supposed to be sold one day before Christmas, and that truck is at the way bridge, it's unbalanced. That load doesn't get to their warehouse and doesn't get distributed, and therefore it doesn't make Christmas.
Mm.
The person who is at the way bridge might not understand that. And the person who is in the committee is there representing the regulator, but might not understand how things work, and therefore
Yeah.
doesn't understand that the impact of this. Isn't there then a need that the industry put something together and say, here are some of the things that we grapple with? Yes, we know that we are in the meetings with us with these things, but this is a cry for help from in the industry because of the impact of this law that we've made in 2014, that is almost 10 years old, that nothing really has happened with it, except that there's a fine when you get to the way bridge, except that you sit at the way bridge until you rebalance your load. What are some of the other countries doing, and what can we share with the regulator to say we need to develop this? You can't put the regulation there and walk away.
Agreed. As you know, the role of government is to create an enabling framework for business to actually thrive and for the economy to grow. The enabling environment, Putti, to be honest with you, is not there, certainly not in transport.
Mm.
And I think, I've come to realize that it's up to us as a private sector to take on the baton and to move with it. We still lobby government through various forums, but I think we've got to talk to the minds, either as individual transporters like yourself or as collectives like the RTMS committee or maybe the RFA or the Road Freight Summit. So I think it won't take just one person or one association to get the wheels turning. We've got to collaborate and have a multi-pronged approach to continually nag government, talk to the mines, talk to the forestry people, talk to the FMCG guys, and collectively over time, hopefully if we scream and shout loud enough, somebody will realize, hey, we are shooting ourselves in the foot. Everyone's talking about economic growth, high unemployment, all of the factors that are affecting the economy. But here's something that's simple matter of enforcement that's not being done, that's hurting us. So
Yeah,
I'm afraid no silver bullet, Putti, but just keep
yeah,
talking,
of
keep
course.
working together.
Of course. And I mean, I didn't expect us to have a solution here, but at least to, plant a seed. The other
Sure.
thing about sustainability, and you did make an example earlier, but I just want to stretch that example with your permission. The loading. I mean, I'm still on the loading, really. The loading, if with every load you're underloading, let's say you're underloading by 2 tons, right? And your truck can do 30 tons. It means in 15 loads, you could have saved 1 truck off the road.
Yeah.
And I know in other countries, they look at this like a hawk. And because this is sustainability, this is 1 less truck, 1 less a meter on the road because of the way you have loaded. We don't get that from our customers. We don't see them understanding that that the loading for them is also revenue, and I've highlighted this in some of the discussions, but it's also revenue lost, because if I'm buying 33 tons and I get 32 tons, I might not, as a salesperson, I might not have an opportunity to sell that 1 extra ton.
Right.
I've thrown the opportunity away. But from a sustainability, from a environmental perspective, and from a business rational perspective, there's just money left on the table. Are we engaging about this at any level?
Um, okay, I'm on the I'm still on the forestry committee, and okay, this is just one committee, and what they do, they monitor all the trucks going from the forest into the mills, Mondi, SAPI, NCT, and
Yeah,
they monitor underloading as well for exactly the reason you've mentioned. In the timber sector, the transport costs are a big component of the total delivered cost of paper or other products that the mills produce. So for
mm,
them, 1% saving on transport cost makes a big difference in their supply chain. But I
yeah,
can't think of too many other industries that are doing it that way. Some of the very professional transporters, absolutely, they are doing
mm,
it and monitoring underloading. But it's something that needs further discussion. And you probably heard of the PBS pilot project, which is
mm,
higher capacity vehicles, and that talks to what you were saying now. Instead of using 10 trucks to move 100 tons in 2 weeks, you could move 100 tons in 2 weeks with 6 trucks.
yeah, yeah,
Reduced number of trucks, reduced emissions, fuel saving, all the rest of it. But that's, I think, a different topic for another day. But the
yeah.
point is, we have to think about, these little fine details, monitoring underloads. Most people don't even think about it, but it's costing the transporter, the client, and the broader economy in terms of lost revenue and inefficiency.
Gentlemen, I'm
Absolutely.
going to have to cut you because we are
Okay.
towards 2 o'clock. But what I'm loving is this with every challenge that we had today, this is actually speaking to part two of this conversation, which I believe we will have to sit and curate. And in a month, or either next month or in July, we'll have a part two of this conversation. What do you think?
Actually, before I tell you what I think there's I had a number of questions or discussion points around the use of telematics. I think we that's another efficiency money left on the table. So I think we're not going to cover it now, but there is need to discuss these things because they don't affect only the business, but they also affect the country. And then there's a point to be said about what things affect the country that we tend to not look at, and it is Oliver's bread and butter to look at these things that also affect the country, not just the business. I am available for the part two. Um, if Oliver is available for part two, I'm very, very keen to do that.
Absolutely, totally keen to do part two.
No, that will be great. That will be great. I think we'll have a conversation offline, and everybody that is watching, thank you so, so much, Puti and Oliver. I'm just
First, can I
looking
say,
at the time.
I'm sorry
Yes,
to,
sir.
sorry to interrupt you. Just a closing comment.
Yes.
Even if the colleagues on the chat don't become RTMS certified, don't get audited, but just take the principles of what Pucci and I have said today. Adopt the principles one by one, brick by brick, and do it slowly if you're a small business. Don't do it all at once because you can't really. But just take the principles and try out just a small one. Try out driver training purely for economic benefit. Tell the
Mm.
drivers about fuel consumption. Start there. Once you see the money savings, I promise you, you will want to look deeper. That's
Absolutely.
me done.
I couldn't agree with you more. And Florence, those small businesses that want to reach out to us, to myself, I can't offer Oliver. They are welcome to do that. I can share what the little that I've known, so that we grow as an industry and we grow profitably as a country.
Great. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Again, to everybody that is watching, thank you. And everybody else that's going to be watching this recording afterwards, thank you very much. There will be a part two. I think there's certain things that Puti asked that really even require other panelists in this conversation. And we'll make sure that in part two, we have other representatives that can also add some insights in the solutions that we're looking for transporters and also the country at large. To the two gentlemen, thank you so much. And also expect a lot of posts about this particular recording. I'll be breaking it up into small nuggets, of certain things that you have said, so that a lot of people reach this recording. It's been insightful, and thank you very much. And look out on the agenda for the Road Freight SME Summit taking place in October. Thank you,
Thanks very much.
gentlemen.
And
I'm
thanks,
going
Oliver, for your nuggets. The great
No, Putti, you've been the star of the show, so thank you.
Putti was ready for us, huh? He was ready.
Absolutely, he did his homework.
Thank you,
Yes,
Mitchell.
guys.
Let's impact
Okay.
to Putti. Your presentation will be on. We are going to try again. We're going to see your presentation. Thank you,
Okay.
guys.
Great.
Okay,
Okay,
bye
thanks.
everyone.
Bye.
Cheerio.